Hi, my name is Sofia Barone. The topic I've chosen to do my digital presentation on is the Sicilian Mafia and the history of the La Cosa Nostra. Introduction. What is the Mafia? The Mafia, or sometimes the mob, or the Italian-American Mafia, is a highly organized Italian-American criminal society. The most well-known Italian organized crime group is the Mafia, or Sicilian Mafia, referred to as Cosa Nostra by members. It started on the island of Sicily and was born in the 19th century. The structure of the Mafia was based on authority and dependence and seemed to be very difficult to stop the Mafia's organized crimes. The term Mafia is too general, as it could possibly refer to any criminal organization, not just in Italy. This is why Sicilians have adopted the term Cosa Nostra to represent the Sicilian Mafia. The name Mafia first appeared in 1863, indicating Sicilian criminal organization. The Mafia, unlike terrorism, combines criminal and illicit activity with normal and legal economic activity. On the one hand, it produces death. On the other, it produces the distribution of wealth. The structure of the Mafia is classically based on vertical relations of authority and dependence, with little or no horizontal solidarity among equals. The Mafia went after riches and had an influence on politics. The Sicilian Mafia, the Camorra of Naples, and the 'Ndrangheta of Calabria are the most well-known Italian Mafia-type organized crime groups. What crimes did the Mafia commit? Probably the most serious threat to the internal security of Italy is posed by organized crime. Organized crime wields economic and social, as well as political, power which has a destructive effect on people and their institutions. They are also involved in a broad spectrum of illegal activities including murder, extortion, drug trafficking, corruption of public officials, gambling, infiltration of legitimate businesses, labor racketeering, loan sharking, prostitution, pornography, tax fraud, schemes, and stock manipulation. The easy availability of heroin from the Mafia network was viewed as a major reason for the upsurge of crime in Italy. Not only did the Mafia gain control of the wholesale market for vegetables, meat, and fish, and engage in cigarette smuggling as well as real estate speculation, it also attempted to require a share of the best resources the state was sending to the South for economic development. Juvenile crime also has exploded in recent years, coinciding with organized crime's recruitment of youth from local gangs because of the Mafia. Sicilian violence reached its worst in the early 1990s. A new wave of assassination started during the brief 2-week period in the fall of 1988. 18 people, including a judge, was murdered by Mafia gunmen. Sicilia, Calabria, and Campania accounted for 66% of the homicides in Italy. As rival gangs in Sicilia, Calabria, and Naples area started an unending series of murders in their drug-related turf wars. They killed several magistrates, police officers, and politicians. After each assassination, high-ranking officials of the state government, including the President of the Republic and the Prime Minister, flew to Sicily to attend the victim's funeral and used the occasion to deliver the unusual political homilies, pledging that the fight against the Mafia would be stepped up. Most Italians are upset with the presence of the Mafia in Italy and are horrified whenever television and the newspapers report the latest gory details of what crimes they commit. History of the La Cosa Nostra. The La Cosa Nostra, also known as the mob or the Mafia, evolved from Sicilian Mafia and is one of the foremost organized criminal threats to American society. These crime families or groups, linked by blood ties or through conspiracy, are generally arranged geographically and are engaged in significant and organized racketeering activity. The term family, also known as a criminal group, denotes the fundamental importance given to the concept of loyalty and honor. Giuseppe Esposito was the first Sicilian Mafia member to emigrate to the U.S. He and 6 other Sicilians fled to New York after murdering the chancellor and a vice-chancellor of a Sicilian province and 11 wealthy landowners. He was arrested in New Orleans in 1881 and extradited to Italy. Although La Cosa Nostra has its roots in Italian organized crime, it has been a separate organization for many years. The year 1985 will go down in Italian history as an important one in the fight against organized crime. During this year, the trial against Camera was concluded with a series of spectacular convictions. The end of the year also witnessed the conclusion of the investigations for the mega trial in Palermo of the Sicilian Mafia, which has among the 707 accused some of the most significant names in the Sicilian business world, including Buscetta. The judges in Palermo provided 3 explanations. Cosa Nostra had been overturned by the wicked acts of his enemies, which transformed the organization into a criminal association of the worst kind and that he no longer recognized. He had to vindicate himself for all of the grief he was made to suffer. And Buscetta decided to entrust the judicial system with his fate and the secrets of the Cosa Nostra at the moment in which the state was beginning to demonstrate with the facts of the will to prosecute the crimes of the Mafia. Buscetta was only convicted twice and acquitted of all other charges because of insufficient evidence. Because insufficient evidence is quite an honorable event for the mafioso, it generates the firm belief by the public that the crimes were indeed committed, but the accused could count upon the salience of those around him to avoid conviction. He was involved with narcotics in the 1960s, trafficking, and was arrested in Brazil for the murder of a youth and for drug trafficking. Buscetta was definitely one of the most notorious members of the Cosa Nostra. The history is endless with the Mafia. These are just a few notable events that happened during the history of the Cosa Nostra. Notorious Mafia members. There are many notorious Mafia members. One of them was Tommaso Buscetta. He was an Italian mobster, a member of the Sicilian Mafia, who became one of the first of its members to turn informant and explain the inner workings of the organization. He was hunted by the Cosa Nostra. He was convicted of a homicide. He and the Mafia killed a young police agent whose job was to track down Mafia fugitives. Buscetta, who grew up in Palermo, the youngest of 17 children, was the only sibling to join the Mafia. He became an influential figure who commanded respect that went beyond his rank as a soldier. Mob bosses sought his advice. He was intelligent and worldly, having lived in Brazil and Brooklyn, where he worked with the Gambino crime family. But in 1982, Mafia hitmen killed 2 of his sons, a son-in-law, his closest brother, and a nephew in separate incidents in Palermo. The following year, after being arrested in Brazil, he agreed to cooperate with Italian and American law enforcement and signed what became a 3,000-page confession. He testified in Palermo during the Maxi trial, the largest anti-mob prosecution in history, which culminated in 1987 with the conviction of 342 mafioso. He was the first leader of the organization now dubbed La Cosa Nostra. He established its code of conduct, set up the family divisions and structure, and enacted procedures for resolving disputes. 2 of the most powerful La Cosa Nostra families, known today as the Genovese and Gambino families, emerged from Maranzano's restructuring efforts. He named Luciano the first boss of what would later be known as the Genovese family. Luciano showed his appreciation less than 5 months later by sending 5 men dressed as police officers to Maranzano's office to murder him. After the Masseria hit, Salvatore Maranzano emerged as the capo di tutti capi, which means boss of all bosses, and organized the New York Mafia into the infamous 5 families that remain in place to this day. He even established a code of conduct for this newfound confederation dubbed La Cosa Nostra. Lastly, born in 1897 in Sicily and raised in New York City, Lucky Luciano played a pivotal role in creating the National Crime Syndicate and is considered the mastermind behind modern organized crime in America, thanks to his establishment of its governing body, the Commission in 1931. During that decade, Luciano became the most powerful mob boss as head of the Genovese crime family. Lastly, another notorious member of the Sicilian Mafia was Vito Genovese. With a craving for money and power, Vito Genovese is known for having both empowered the American Mafia as well as compromising it by the end of his reign. Born in 1897 in a province in Naples, Genovese moved to Manhattan as a teen. He rose to power during Prohibition and had close ties with Luciano, helping him build the Commission. Vito Genovese was ambitious and power-hungry. He was remembered as much for his feared reputation as for being at least partially responsible for the downfall of organized crime in the United States in the later half of the 20th century. In 1958, the federal government indicted him for smuggling and distributing narcotics, and in 1959 he was convicted and sentenced to federal prison for 15 years. From prison, he continued to rule and to order the killing of rivals. There were many other notorious mafia members, but these are just a few notorious ones that stuck out to me. What mafia exists today? Today, the American Mafia cooperates in various criminal activities with Italian organized crime groups such as the Sicilian Mafia, the Camorra of Naples, and the 'Ndrangheta of Calabria. There are about 3,000 members and affiliates in the U.S., the FBI estimates. In Castellano's day, there were double that number in the New York area alone. Yet the same five families, Gambino, Bonanno, Colombo, Genovese, and Lucchese, have survived since Charles Lucky Luciano founded the Commission. The mob is alive and well, said William Gale, head of the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force in New York. They've learned the attention is not good for business. The mafia as a traditional type of formal organization has vanished in America today. The mafia still operates among fellow Sicilians and Italians, but these ties now coexist with bureaucratic ones. There's very little communication among the five families. They've been kept quiet. They also participate in gambling. Summary of the mafia. Overall, the mafia may be described as family-like, but it's definitely not like the family we're used to at home. The mafia lacked a hierarchy of authority, specialization, and a correct system of rules. There were many notorious members that shaped the way the Cosa Nostra was and is currently. Although almost every activity the mafia was involved with was illegal, they made a ton of money off of it and got away with some of their acts for so long. For example, Buscetta was arrested and convicted twice for the things that he has done. The two main groups of the mafia that still exist today are the Camorra and Ndrangheta. There are endless amounts of information about the mafia, and that's what I find most interesting. I can probably continue to learn more information about them beyond this presentation and discover more of what they did and how their criminal minds worked. Most Italians were and are still upset whenever they hear any news associated with the mafia. They seem to be very dangerous people, and they were and are still involved in savagery acts. These are just some photos of the Sicilian Mafia. Charles Lucky Luciano on the top, and then on the bottom, Tommaso Buscetta, and then on the right, you just see a lot of notorious members that I spoke about earlier.